Good morning. We should introduce ourselves first. My name's Al Huizenga, and I am the product manager at Google Cloud, responsible for Google's contributions to Tekton. I don't make too many of the contributions myself. I just cheer on my engineers, and that's basically my job. And here's one of them, Dibyo.
Hey, I'm Dibyo Mukherjee. I've been with Tekton since about 2019. I'm currently a Tekton maintainer, governing board member. So yeah, it's great to be here.
I already regret the title of our presentation. It's called Tekton State of the Union. And usually it's a president who gives the State of the Union, and we're not the presidents of Tekton. We're just part of a big community that's doing tons of stuff. As a fairly new product manager in Tekton, I'm spending a lot of time just reaching out to people who are doing Tekton things, contributing to it, but also building really great scalable CI systems on it, and just discovering new amazing things about what people are doing with Tekton all the time. So we don't really know the state of the union of Tekton. It's a big, thriving community. There's lots of stuff happening that we're not aware of, and that always surprises us. But what we're going to do is maybe just curate some of the things that Tekton has done in the past, what's important now, and then looking forward, where we're going to probably see areas of focus as Tekton matures. So that's today. Yeah, so I was looking at the commit logs for the core project, the core repo for Tekton, which is the Pipelines project, to get a sense of where things began. This is from 2018. It isn't the very first commit. It's probably the first substantive commit. It's from Christy Wilson, who still works at Google. Not everybody mentioned here does, but she does. A few others do as well. And it's really interesting. She has a book, actually, that just came out the other day called Grokking Continuous Delivery, which is really exciting. And she was kind of fundamental in the early stages of Tekton. You can see she's saying here, I've been working on a straw man proposal, right, for adding a pipeline CRD and for possibly involving, I love the fact that there's a typo in it. I think that's really great. And then she also included a diagram, a very simple diagram of Tekton core concepts that still really kind of holds water. And I think this is one of the reasons Tekton has thrived. It has good bones. Like the basic ideas and the basic design of it have stood up over time. And here we are 4 years later, and Tekton, this is what the super impressive diploma was all about. Tekton is graduating, which just means we're moving from sort of the sandbox to the list of projects under the CDF that is mature. And what does that mean? This is a quote from Andrea, who's sitting right there. Andrea, you probably came up with this quote all by yourself, right? Somebody just held up a microphone to your mouth and you just, this is what you said? No. But the themes here really are that that Tekton does what it does really well, that it's lightweight and that it's flexible. Again, that the bones are good, the core concepts are actually have high utility. And as a result of that, the community is thriving. And also, really importantly, people are actually using it to build highly scalable production CI systems in complex environments. And that's really gratifying to see. That's because of the work of a ton of people. So Tekton has a really healthy and thriving contributor base. You can see there's a COVID dip in the commit rate over time. And I think we are seeing that in some of the other open source projects too that Google is involved with, but it is recovering and starting to thrive again. Instead of just that core repository, which is the Pipelines repository, there's 15 additional repositories, all of which contain sort of important supporting projects for Tekton, one of the most important of which we'll talk about more today, which is Tekton Chains, which is really the part of Tekton having to do with securing your software supply chain. And this has really been the best part of my job for the last 6 months since I joined Google. People are using it to build really cool and interesting stuff. We're working hard to get them to allow us to name them and celebrate them and to create some user stories that we can share. I did pull out some anonymized quotes from my notes as I've been talking to Tekton practitioners over the last 6 months. And I won't read them all here. We'll share the slides and you can go through them. But there are some really interesting patterns. Like invariably when you talk to somebody about why they picked Tekton, because there's lots of other tools that are out there, they have a goal having to do with, somebody says here, I think in the first one, managing CI by convention, not just by configuration. So really the driving idea is they want to have well-established and standardized patterns for their pipelines that they can use to support their very big application engineering teams. And usually you're talking to a DevOps team that's like, 2 or 3 people and a dog or whatever, right? And so they're trying to punch above their weight and do something that's really hard at scale, which is de-risk continuous integration for their application engineering teams. And Tekton is really well designed to do that, to help them do that.
All right, so we've been working on a lot to get to the CDF graduation stage. So Andrea did a lot of the work to get us there. But behind the scenes, we've also been getting very close to a V1 launch for the core pipelines API that Al has been talking about. So pipelines is sort of the core of the project where you get to define your CI/CD pipelines. And the goal behind our V1 launch is sort of to have a well-tested, stable release of pipelines that you can use to build production bespoke CI/CD systems on top of. So with V1 is supposed to be launched next month, November for Tekton, and with that, we will have no new backwards incompatible changes to the very core V1 API. So you can be rest assured and guaranteed that you can build on top, and you have the guarantee of the same feature existing. We are also moving into a cadence of 4 supported long-term releases model for Tekton. So previously we used to do a release every month, and we would do best effort patching in security vulnerabilities and updates and bug fixes and things like that. With V1 and graduation, we are trying to make it even more stable. So for 4 releases, 1 a quarter, we will basically mark them as long-term releases that will get support, bug fixes, patch releases, etc. for a duration of a year. So that's on the stability axis of the work we have been doing. But at the same time, we have also been adding in a lot of cool features. And I could spend an hour talking about any of these, but we'll just do a very condensed version. A really cool one is remote resolution, which you can have your pipelines and your tasks directly from Git repos and be used within Tekton, so you don't have to manage extra CRDs on the cluster for yourself. We have been trying to make it a little bit easier to do work with more structured inputs and outputs using object parameters and results. Tekton's always had this capability for you to design your own graph of tasks that you want to fan in and fan out. But with Matrix, we have really made it super simple for CI use cases to do Matrix builds. Compute resources, Tekton is built on Kubernetes, and then managing cluster resources efficiently has been, it's a very tricky problem. So we've done a lot of effort to make sure that you can actually specify exactly what compute resources that you want efficiently at the task level, and then go from there. And finally, there's a lot of YAML in Tekton, so we've been doing a lot of work to reduce the verbosity of YAML while still maintaining the overall power and flexibility that Tekton is well known for. So that's just on the pipeline side of things. Another big one, we just heard about the software supply, the secure software supply chain. And then, we have Tekton Chains, which is sort of our, the Tekton project that provides, helps you get to SLSA levels by default. So Tekton Chains will provide provenance information attestation by default. It will sign images, and recently we have been working on features that helps you sign not just images, but other kinds of artifacts, so Maven packages, Python packages, all that kind of stuff. It can push attestations, and it basically allows you to get SLSA L2 right now, and we are hard at work trying to get it to SLSA L3. So just using Tekton and Chains, you should be able to get to a very strong guarantees for S3C. And we are trying to integrate very well into the rest of the ecosystem around software supply chain. Keyless signing has been a big deal. We work pretty well with Sigstore and cosign. So Chains will use cosign to sign things. We are working on a task signing and verification mechanism, so you can sign your task and see which tasks are signed, etc. We are featured in Fresca, which is, I can never say this right, which is the factory for repeatable software secure creation of artifacts, I think, which is sort of a factory blueprint for how to build things in S3C, and Chains and pipelines are sort of a core component of that. So all around lots of great work going around in pipelines.
Yeah, as Dibyo said, this is a really interesting area of development for Tekton, and there's a lot of hairy details. So if anybody's interested interested in chatting with us about it afterwards, I'll do my very best. That leaves us with maybe just a couple of minutes to talk about like what's coming with Tekton and where the area of focus is going to be. I would say that generally, I don't know, Andrea, if you think I'm wrong, you just throw something at the stage. But I feel like Tekton is sort of transitioning out of really nailing the core stuff and now starting to sort of grapple with some of the practical problems and challenges of integrating Tekton in production systems. Right? So this has to do with management at scale. This has to do with interoperability with the other systems that Tekton has to coexist with as part of the complete end-to-end delivery flow. You'll see at the top, a big part of this is actually reusability, just allowing people to have a reusable catalog of tasks that are standardized to that. And we actually recently, did we retire it? That's probably not the way to say it. We migrated from, or decided, I suppose, to migrate from the Tekton Hub, which was Tekton's project having to do with how we serve up catalogs of tasks, to the Artifact Hub, which is a different project that was just a little bit more advanced and allowed us to move from a scenario where we had sort of a catalog that was just sort of maintained by a core set of people to a distributed catalog environment where different verified publishers can actually maintain and manage their own catalogs, and Artifact Hub supported that a lot more elegantly. So that's really great. We're working on just task signing and verification so we can make sure that everything that's shared in that Tekton catalog is trustworthy. Managing at scale is really interesting. We're trying to start to address things that you only run into when you have massive environments. So part of that is the decomposability of pipelines. Pipeline YAML gets really, really big. So could you please sort of have recurring pipelines or pipelines within pipelines so that you can manage it at a more granular level? Just concurrency management, so what happens when you have pipelines and tasks that have the same name that are trying to run at the same time? Can you have a configurable rule set to control how your system behaves? Custom tasks is a big deal, right? Custom tasks is basically a framework to do things that aren't sort of supported by core Tekton that might be important for your particular environment or for your particular CI requirements. Yes. Oh, you like that? Oh, that's your project. Okay, good. I thought maybe I got it wrong. No. Git integration. This is a really important one. Like Tekton integrates well with GitHub, and everybody who's implementing Tekton has some flavor of triggering workflows based on things that happen in GitHub, PRs and commits, and then making results, log files, the status of pipelines and tasks available to the developers who live in GitHub. The Tekton functionality around this is still fairly raw and low level, which is fine because Tekton is a flexible framework, but there's more we can do to just create more built-ins around this to make it easier. So that's what workflows is all about. Dibyo actually has a session on workflows this afternoon, so I'll stop before I steal all your thunder. And finally, just continuing to push the envelope when it comes to secure supply chain. So this stuff gets really complicated, but in a nutshell, SLSA level 3 versus level 2 has to do with moving from being able to provide attestations about the provenance of the tasks and the artifacts in your build process to making sure that that provenance is unalterable or immutable, non-falsifiable. And so we've got a number of planned features that are in the design stage now aimed at helping you do that. One of them is an integration with SPIF, Spire, which is an implementation of SPIF. And it's a very cool framework for basically for workload identification. And then just a policy layer that allows you to control what happens based on that identification and verification, where particular verified workloads can and cannot run, for example. So yeah, altogether, that's, I think, basically focusing on things that are a little bit more mature, or that represent sort of the needs of people doing production implementations of Tekton. I didn't list it, but another big area of focus for us is, of course, documentation. So as we evolve in that way, our documentation has to go beyond just sort of tutorials, core concepts, getting started, and start to focus on things like production scalability limits, some of the challenges you're actually going to run into when you try to build with this thing. More detailed information about how to integrate Tekton into particular environments, how to authenticate, for example, in our case, against Google Cloud products and services, which is always trickier than you think it should be. So that is very roughly the state of the union with Tekton. Are we doing questions, Fatih, or are we just moving on? Just move on? Yeah, okay. Well, we're around, so please corner us and ask us anything you like. And really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. Thank you, Fatih.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Cheers.